Hey everyone, welcome to JFree906 and the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch show we're going to do here for you tonight, man. John Edwards riding shotgun tonight. John, how you doing?
Great. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing fantastic. You know, we've had some really fantastic guests over the course of the last couple weeks. And it's kind of a funny story about this. I'll mention it real briefly, but talking with some of these guys that I've had on, James Keenan, Carl the Crusher, I had no idea that they actually knew. When I asked them, when I first talked to them, I had no idea that they knew each other and they were working together. At that time, I had no idea. And these things that I'm finding out now it's pretty crazy. But folks, thank you so much for being here tonight. Wow, we got quite a crowd already, John.
It's amazing. I mean, look at this, Jeff. Oh my God.
Oh, so I'll give a couple of, oh my gosh, what in the world?
Oh. Wow. How generous, Jeff.
Oh
wow.
My gosh. Ron again. Ron. I mean, dude.
Such generosity. It's amazing. Come on, Ron.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
That's
thank
awesome.
you so much. It truly helps. I really appreciate it. SoCal Gal is here. I think the very first one again was Paula. Paula was here first, I think, tonight. Wade's here. We got Jeff and everything. I tell you what, I don't want to run through all the names, folks, because we got a guest and I want to get right to our guest. But so let me just say a couple things getting up. If you're on the YouTube here, obviously you are, because I think that's the only one I'm running tonight is YouTube. Click on that subscribe button for us. And if you like the content of our show, give us a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithms of YouTube and it gets it out to more places when you do that. We appreciate it. If you don't like the show, then I understand. Don't give a thumbs up. But if you have a good time and you enjoy the show, give us a thumbs up. And if you click on that notification bell, then you will be notified as soon as we go live, because quite sometimes I just have things I want to talk about and click it. We go live and have at it. And also, if you want to help support the show, and those of you who've done so tonight, thank you so very much.
Generous.
Really do appreciate it. But we have our Patreon channel or our page out there. It's patreon.com. And then, of course, it's JFree906 there as well. So we appreciate all of you so very much. Our patrons, I truly appreciate you. It really helps to take and, pay for all this stuff and what we do, monthly fees for things and all that. But we appreciate it so very much. So thank you. Let's see. What have we got going on here? I'll tell you what, we're going to get rolling right into this. And we have our very special guest tonight, Chris Bartel. Chris has what I know. I can't even preface it all because he's had such an amazing
so yeah. Jeff, the pre-show, it was amazing.
Wait till you hear. He's been telling us some stuff, but wait till you hear his stories about his time on Skinwalker Ranch and the area and all. Sit back, folks. You're going to enjoy this one. We'll get right back with this in just a moment, right after this. Why do the UFOs show up there? Why are there so many going there and spotted there over most any place else in the world? There are other UFO hotspots, but Skinwalker Ranch area is definitely one of them. This shot right here, this is basically a collage of all the UAPs that they had seen over the ranch during last season. They put them all together into one picture. And that's a lot of them. And it was when the drill rig was in the ground, their compasses were changing. Instead of pointing to north, they were pointing at the drill rig. I mean, how does things like this happen?
I feel like with the insiders, it's really unique where it doesn't feel like we're fans anymore necessarily. Like we are, but like we're involved.
Right.
And that feels much more official than a fan.
All right, we are back. Hey, welcome everybody again, and our very special guest, Chris Bartel. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and I appreciate the time, John, spending time with me and having a conversation about my background and everything I've done at Skinwalker Ranch.
Yep, I know you and I started talking months ago, and I know you had such a busy schedule going on, and you always do. And it was we were trying to find a time where we could fit you in and get you on the show when you had free time. And it was, we kind of battled on it, but I tell you what, I appreciate you sticking with me on all of that. And then finally, we were able to work on a time to bring you on. And I can't thank you enough, because the more I have talked to you, and then some of your friends, James Keenan and Carl the Crusher, and I'm sure there's more that I'll find out about, but I have come, and seeing you on the show, Secret of Skinwalker Ranch,
Right.
I've come to realize that you have an amazing background, not only with the Skinwalker Ranch, but prior to that, that kind of gives you an advantage leading you into what you did there and what you're doing now.
Right.
And I wanted that, because of all of our folks out there, and I'm learning too, but I wanted that. Could you tell us a little bit about your background for everyone here? And then again, how this led you into what you're doing today?
Yeah. And once again, thank you for you guys' time. I appreciate everybody here that wants to listen to my story and stuff. My background basically started in the United States Air Force in 1997.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a Navy guy myself, so.
Oh, right on. Thank you for your service. And so I started in the United States Air Force, and I was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, Nevada, home of the fighter pilot. And I was a security police officer out there for the main base side of the house. And Nellis Air Force Base is a very unique Air Force base because, one day you're doing regular cop stuff, domestic disputes, traffic stops, whatever. And the next day you're doing nuclear convoy security for nuclear weapons. And the next day you're guarding Air Force One. And the next day you're doing crash and recovery retrievals for, downed aircraft. So that base is really, they call it baptized by fire, because you're really at a different pace out there. And during my time at Nellis, which was a little over 10 years, I was also a Cadre Instructor for Creech Airforce Base up in Indian Springs, Nevada, for GCTS Ground Combat Training Squadron out there, where we trained other, police officers for mount operations and for deployments and stuff. And I did that for several years. And then that kind of led me to when I was getting out of the Air Force, I was kind of nervous. So I stayed in the reserves. I did almost 9 years active and 3 years reserve. Wow. in the Air Force. So I got hired with the Nevada test site for the Department of Energy at the NNSS, and where I got my Q clearance. And once you get your Q clearance, that opens up a whole different world, basically. Wow. And I worked there for several years. And then my wife, who I actually met in the Air Force, she got orders to Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, and she was from Montana. So we moved out there in 2009. And the Air Force was downsizing, and we got pregnant with our first child, and so she was a cop also. Oh wow! And she was like, they gave her the option to get out of the Air Force, and she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So I fully supported her decision. Yep. So that meant we had to go back to Las Vegas, because that's where all my connections were at. So I basically started making phone calls to all my connections back in Las Vegas. And I contacted one of my very first old Air Force supervisors, and I got hired with a company called CSC, who at the time held the contract for Air 51. So I was hired with them part-time by the time I got to Las Vegas. And then I contacted another friend of mine who was in the Air Force, and he had some detail going on with a ranch in Utah with an aerospace company. And I got hired with Bass at the same time, working for 51. And then that's where I ended up on Skinwalker Ranch. That's where I was assigned to. But yeah, so my career was kind of interesting, because it's all about your reputation, basically, in that world. So I had a pretty good reputation at Nellis, and I just had the mindset of like, showing up, being honest, telling the truth, and accepting the outcome. And that's something I kind of carried through all my whole career. I'm 25 years now in this line of work. Right now, I'm currently a federal police officer. And so my background has always been in this type of environment. So that's what kind of led me to Skinwalker.
And in that as well, and from what I've heard you talking about and what I've read about your past, this puts you in a perspective because of your training, and especially with law enforcement. you are an investigator. I mean,
Right.
that's kind of what you've been trained as, being an investigator as well, right? So you're bringing that to the table.
Correct. And I'm glad you bring that up, because I think that the term investigator gets tossed around too much in this type of community where, you know, I think people do a lot of good job researching and stuff, but unless you've been, you know, trained in investigations, either through a police academy, a private eye license, or a criminal justice degree or something, it's that gives you a little more credibility, I think, when it comes to doing a real investigation. And that was my mindset when I got to Skinwalker Ranch. I treated the ranch like a giant crime scene, and it was my job to find physical evidence to back up the claims that were out there. And the evidence that I found led to a different conclusion than some other people. And also I butted heads with some people, and I just I think it's, you know, there's a lot of people that want to say they're investigators, but you look into their history and they've never been properly trained. So a lot comes with that, especially when you're doing interviews with people. You're not necessarily just writing down their story. You're judging their mannerisms. You know, are they lying to you?
Right.
And I think a lot of times people want to believe so badly, they just automatically hear a story and then full on believe it without really diving down to the truth. And that was always my focus, was like, I'll listen to anyone's story, and I've listened to a lot of them, but I want to find out the person's character. If their character's flawed, then there might be a problem with their stories. And then usually that's probably the case in some of these situations.
Yep. And I hear that law enforcement coming out in that right there. That's absolutely, you know, we had a gentleman on here it's been about a month ago now, Greg Lawson. And he did an investigation. He is a investigator. He's been trained to he's in law enforcement. He's been trained to do this, as you say. I call myself a paranormal investigator, but truly, am I really an investigator? And in those terms, no, I'm not. I'm really not. I'm somebody who goes out and collects data and then tries to take and do the best you can with that data, but uneducated. And I've trained myself over the years and then working with other people. But you know, you're right. That term does get tossed around, and I've done it myself. And because I really don't have that background, but I enjoy doing it. So that's what's really important. And also, like I was talking about Greg Lawson, is that he brought that same thing to the table. He said some of the same things that I'm hearing you say, which I know has to do with your training. And I appreciate that, you know, so very much. So, and these places you've been and you've worked, I mean, you talked about the combat training also that you were involved in. That was I forgot, was a CM? I forgot what that was.
GCTS, Ground Combat Training Squadron.
Yes. Yep. And so tell us a little bit about that. I just want to hear a little bit about that, if you don't mind. You don't have to go into detail, and if there's any secrets that you're not supposed to tell, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go there. But what can you tell us about that? I'm just kind of curious myself.
Yeah, basically it's called Silver Flag Alpha is the proper name for it. It's a location up in Creech Airforce Base where other Air Force cops train Air Force cops about deploying overseas to combat locations. So during that time, you train airmen about MOUT operations, which stands for military urban tactics and environments like that. And you do like anti-terrorism stuff and reactions to ambushes, and you do all kinds of weapons training and stuff. And you do that prior to being deployed overseas to kind of get your mindset ready to where you're going.
Yeah.
And it was a great job. You land nav, and that was really my favorite part, was doing land navigation, where you're out in the middle of nowhere with just a compass and some guys, and you're trying to find points on a map, and you know you're operating at nighttime using NVGs and stuff. And that was a really good time in my career in the Air Force. But I had a lot of good times in the Air Force. You know, I also did a lot of crash and recovery retrievals for downed aircraft while I was out there. And you know, one thing I haven't really talked about on any shows is it was after my 21st birthday in September, I think it was September 5th, 1998. My very first experience with a crash site was we had 2 Pavehawk helicopters crash up at Creech Airforce Base. We lost 12 airmen. And that was my first introduction to crash and retrieval.
Wow.
You know,
wow,
that was something that stuck with me it still sticks with me to this day. But that opened up a whole nother part of my career because I had that experience. Now, every time there was a plane that went down, I would be tasked to go out there with other airmen to secure it and stay out there until investigation was done. So,
Wow. Yep.
Uh-huh.
like I said before, Nellis Air Force Base was a great base. I really enjoyed my time out there. I spent about a total of 20 years in Las Vegas.
Wow.
Wow.
That's really something. And I have friends that, you know, not in it, that have been part of it, you know, EMTs and volunteer work for that kind of stuff up in Northern Michigan. There's a lot of volunteers for that sort of thing. But also, you know, and having to go out on a crash site and something horrific, you know, where there's body parts that you have to, it takes a special kind of person to be able to do that and then not be horrified by it, you know, and have lingering. I mean, even if you are, I mean, you're still probably going to have lingering effects from that, you know, that kind of experience. And even in combat, you know, I did my service in the Navy, and you know, I was over there during the time that Ayatollah Khomeini had the hostages in Iran. Now, I wasn't in any combat, so I was spared from all that, but so many weren't, and so many have the scars from that. I can only imagine. My goodness.
Right.
So, you know, when you got brought into the Bigelow scene, to working on Skinwalker Ranch, kind of take us, you said you found out about it via a friend of yours, an Air Force friend. Take us into that a little bit, and what was your main job and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking for a good full-time job because I had a brand new baby on the way. And so this is also in 2010. So the economy in Las Vegas was pretty grim. And there was a federal hiring freeze at the time. And I was trying to get back to the Nevada test site because that's where I had just came from, was a DOE. And I wanted to get back up there, but they were on a federal hiring freeze. So I was looking for any type of full-time work. And I got hired with CSC with the 51 detail, but that was only part-time until a full-time spot opened up. In the meantime, I needed to find a full-time job. So I started making all my, contacts, and I contacted my friend who was in the Air Force, and he had this assignment with, all he told me on the phone was like, hey, we got some ranch that we got to protect, and that's it. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. And then that kind of led to an interview with Colin Kelleher and him. And, during the interview, Colin and my friend asked, normal security questions. And then during the interview, Colin asked me some questions it kind of caught me by surprise. He was like, are you open to the paranormal? And I'm like, whoa. I didn't know how to answer, honestly, because coming from the DOE with a Q clearance, if you say something like you believe in UFOs or ghosts or whatever, they'll pull your clearance.
Yep.
Wow.
You'll lose your clearance overnight. And I just said, I'm going to answer honestly. And I said, yeah, I do believe. And I've had experiences before coming to the Air Force and stuff. And so we wrapped up the interview, and I was downstairs, and my friend came down and said, hey, you got the job. And then then it became a little more detailed about what the job entailed and what we were going to do. And I was like, okay. And this is back in 2010. So there was no a lot of online stuff about Skinwalker Ranch. I didn't even know what the place was at all. I thought, in my mindset, it was just another job assignment,
Yep. And
then in October of 2010 is when I actually officially, boots on the ground at Skinwalker Ranch, and I'm originally from Kansas, and I grew up on a farm where we had horses, and, I was surrounded by wildlife all the time growing up. So when I first got to Skinwalker in that time, it felt like another ranch that I grew up in Kansas, basically, So I felt like, after my first week there, I'm like, this place I didn't feel nothing out of the ordinary. But then my second week up there, I had a pretty wild experience where I was like, wow, there's something else going on out here. And it definitely caught my attention.
Really?
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, I got something to ask. A Q clearance. Can you kind of go into what a Q clearance is? And the second question is, you said 51 detail. Would that be Area 51?
Right, Area 51. But I was assigned to the Jenna detail for 51. The Q clearance is basically the DOE's version of a TSI or a TCI, or a top secret clearance, basically. So you have the DOD and you have the DOE version. The DOE version, people say it's the same, and in some regard, it is the exact same. But I felt, and I've had both clearances, so I feel like when I got my DOE clearance, it was a lot harder to get than my TS clearance for the DOD. So you go through very you go through a pretty intense background for the DOE because you're dealing with nuclear security basically, and the DOE is. I wish I could talk more about it, but I
we respect that, obviously.
With the NDA, with the DOE, I really enjoy my time out there. A great group of guys. Some of the best training I've ever had in my entire life was out there, and a lot of cool stuff out there too. So, but with the DOD, I had the TS clearance too, and it didn't seem as harder to get than the DOE. So the Q clearance is just a different type of label, I guess you want to call it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Jeff, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just thinking about the, because I was a radioman when I was in the Navy, and of course they had to do a top secret clearance for me.
Right.
And they actually go to my hometown and was asking people about me and stuff there. I found out about that years later. I'm like, really? So they do their due diligence. It
was funny when I was going through the transition from the Air Force to the DOE. I really had no idea how intense the background would be for the DOE. And I remember going to the academy, and they kept saying, only 1% of the population can get a Q clearance. And I didn't really believe them until I went through the academy and went through all the stuff. And when they were doing my investigation for my background, at the time, I was a bouncer at a nightclub in Las Vegas called Mix. And it was an ultra lounge in Las Vegas. And I had put one of my managers down as a reference. And sure enough, the FBI came and interviewed the entire department. So when I came in that night to work, everybody assumed that I got arrested or something. They had no idea what was going on, and I was like, "Holy cow!" These really dug in deep to my background, and that was a quite eye-opener experience. And then, then I got hired at the DOE and went through all the academy and training, and I was a security police officer for the DOE, basically.
Gotcha.
Well, that's what I was out there at the Nevada test site, and a lot of history of the Nevada test site. If people get bored or whatever, if you live in the Las Vegas area or even remotely close to Las Vegas, I highly recommend you check out the Atomic Testing Museum. It's off Flamingo Road, and they actually do tours of the Nevada test site.
Oh, really?
Where they put you in a bus and you drive out there and you get to see Sudan Crater and all these, all the nuclear testing that was done out there, and there's more stuff out there. You get to see all that stuff. It's very interesting to check out.
And the other question was the 51 detail. Are you allowed to talk about that at all, or what can you share? Can you share anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, Area 51 is another Air Force base. It's a testing facility. So when I went to 51, basically all my friends in the Air Force worked there. So it was very easy for me to transition out there. So it's another testing facility, and we should probably be thankful that we have those types of testing facilities in our country, because that's what keeps us on the tactical war edge, is having these locations where we are able to test new types of equipment and aircraft to keep us on point with our allies and also our adversaries that want to do harm to America. So so 51. I worked the Janet detail, and that was the Janet is the plane that leaves McCarran Airport. It flies up to 51, and it was a very interesting job to work as well.
That's something I wanted to say too about that. There's a lot of people, we hear so much about Area 51. And we got people on the perimeters trying to look over and see what's going on at Area 51. Right. Well, being in the military, one of my things was, taking the UFO stuff aside out of this, because I really don't know anything about that. So, but Area 51, quit trying, and same thing with Skinwalker Ranch. Quit trying to sneak onto the daggone ranch. And what's going on at Area 51? They have developed military weaponry there, planes and whatnot, and it's there. They're doing it there for a reason. It's to be a secret from our possible enemies. Right. Leave them the hell alone and let them do it.
It really boils down. It really boils down to air power global dominance, and I've said this before. That's the overall objective here, and the way that is accomplished is by keeping everyone in the dark, including our own civilians, including people in the Pentagon. It's to keep everyone in the dark. We're not going to roll out new technology until we absolutely have to, right? Because it can change everything. So, you're right. Stop trying to go. You're not going to. It's not like the whole Storm Area 51 thing. My friends were like, My friends were upset that they had to work so much overtime during that time. But it's like, even if you storm Area 51, you're going to die of dehydration before you even get to anywhere, because it's a very vast area. You know, I don't know. It's
I've always been against the same thing with Skinwalker Ranch. You know, and having to and you know very well, and I'm sure you're going to be telling us about this as we go along here tonight, but you know, quit trying to sneak onto the daggone ranch. I mean, they it's private property for one,
right?
So stay the hell off of it, and you know, and plus they're doing something there that is none of your daggone business until we see it on TV. That always bothers me when people try to sneak on, or like some of the stories you told us earlier about that I'm sure you'll talk about here in a few minutes, but it's just like, come on, people, get
it's okay to be curious, but most importantly, be respectful. That's the main thing. It's just be respectful.
Yep.
I mean, that's what it boils down to. And you know, it's we should be curious. I mean, obviously, but definitely be respectful. That's important too.
One thing I wanted to take us to the ranch. So when you first got there, and you were working for the Bigelow team, what was your walk-on experience when you first got there?
So when I first got out there, you know, I get kind of a debrief about what's expected, what our job tasks were, which is to provide security, obviously, protect the property, because at the time we had, you know, our ranch managers out there, and protect the property, but also collect data or report anything out of the ordinary. That was basically the blanket statement, you know. And then I heard some of the, you know, when I got up there, I heard some of the prior stories that were out there during the Sherman era, and then some other stuff too. And then the first week I was out there, you know, being a photographer is a hobby of mine, but there was a situation at Homestead 2 where they had been photographing inside Homestead 2 for a long time and getting pictures of orbs. And it was dust particles. It was backscatter. And I immediately recognized this for what it was, because I'm a photographer. And when you use a flash inside of a closed area full of dirt and dust, you're going to get backscatter. And so that's what kind of led me to bring my own camera out there, because I had a dust filter system on it, and was able to kind of take some of those images out of the dust particles. And I was able to kind of debunk some of that stuff, and I actually got some real negative feedback when I did that, you know. And I was like, hey, look, and I remember the guy that was training me, he got pretty upset. He was like, you know, this is what they want. I said, well, if this is what they want, I'm not going to report a bunch of BS.
Nope.
And then I was like, I'm here to collect real stuff. Exactly. And I kind of took a step back, like, what's going on here, you know? And then, you know, I did see an orb with my own eyes twice, but it happened in locations where I couldn't get to quickly with a camera to take and that's the whole thing with Skinwalker Ranch. It seems like every time you are waiting to get like some evidence or collect something, it doesn't happen until you least expect it. Then something does happen, and you're not prepared for it. And then so you know, by the first week I was out there, I was kind of thinking to myself, man, this really isn't what I thought it was going to be, you know, because I had, you know, I didn't read the book yet, the Hunt for the Skinwalker book, until like my second month out there, because I didn't want to have any pre-notions of things in my mind and stuff.
Yep.
And then the second week I was out there is where I had a pretty wild experience with another officer. And if you want me to talk about it, I will. But
it's up to you. I would love to hear it. I mean,
absolutely.
I talked about it before on several, even on the TV show I talked about it. And this is, I don't like to say things unless I can back it up with physical evidence or photography or a second witness. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Because having a Q clearance background, I was very careful about reporting stuff and what I was going to say, because I was always afraid to lose that Q clearance. Even some of the things I experienced at Skinwalker Ranch, I was very hesitant to report, because I'm like, I'm experiencing something here, and it's going to make me sound like a crazy person, and nobody's going to believe me, especially when we were down to one person by ourselves. Now you lost the second witness there to back up your story. Yeah. So I didn't report a lot of stuff when we went to one man, because I was afraid of losing my Q clearance. But that's a whole different side topic. So basically, my second week on Skinwalker Ranch, at the time, during this timeline, is when we had two officers up there. So one guy would be up there for a week, and then a guy would come up to relieve that guy. So you're always up there with somebody new every other week, which was great. And so the second week, the other officer came out, and we got along pretty well. He liked to hike and stuff, and me too. So we were out, walking around the ranch all the times and looking for stuff. And we had a routine down where one officer every morning would do like a daytime run around the property to check for anything out of the ordinary or to look for signs of trespassers or whatever. And the other officer would do the daily report from the night before. So, and then that's where we start off. Well, he came back from his run and was like, Chris, I think I found something kind of weird on top of the mesa. Some big tracks, canine tracks. I'm like, what? So we go out there to look, and sure enough, there's these big, like, canine wolf-sized tracks. And at the time, we had labs, full-grown labs, and these tracks pretty much dwarfed the lab tracks.
Really?
But what made it weird was the fact that these tracks appeared like it was walking on 2 feet for a while, and then 4 feet, and then 2 feet, and then 4 feet. There was like a 3-foot stride in this tracks, and I threw down my ruler to measure that and took some pictures, and I might have sent you some. I'm not sure. And they're online. They're on like my Twitter, Chris Bartel SWR Twitter. I post those images all the time to show people that this is something very weird. So it caught my attention, like, hey, this is kind of strange. And so we called our supervisors and let them know what we found. And their advice is, be careful. And so we're kind of like, we're both prior military, so you have that mindset of like, we're going to go out and capture this animal, whatever it is. Because that just looking back now, it seemed pretty ridiculous. But you're out there and you get kind of bored, so like, let's go find this animal. So that night, we went out with the dogs, and we had set up a couple campfires to kind of draw this animal in, and we noticed that on the far right hand corner right there,
right here.
Right there. And if you look at
that's a ruler right there, right?
That's a ruler, yeah.
Yeah. There's a deep print right there, and then another one.
Yeah, and then to the left of that is a small is the lab prints. So yeah, it kind of gives you an idea. Yeah. So that night we go out. We're setting up campfires and stuff, trying to draw this animal in, and we noticed the dogs were acting very suspicious, like really clingy, like right next to us. And so it's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we decided to pack it up. We hadn't really found it. We felt uneasy, and you felt like you were being watched. And that was a sensation that always happened out there. Even to this day, you feel like you're being watched out there. So we started walking back, and it was slightly raining at the time. And we started backtracking our original tracks, and we find those big canine tracks behind our tracks. So this animal was basically stalking us. And so myself and my partner were like, holy cow, we need to get back to Homestead 1.
Now, this is in the daytime? This is at
nighttime. This is about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
So this is at nighttime. And so we start walking back to the trailer, and the dogs were acting very suspicious.
Yeah.
So we knew something was around the area, but we couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we get around the corner, where the place called the Triangle now. Back then we didn't call it the Triangle, we call it the Curve. And this incident happened at the Triangle. So I'm about 50 feet ahead of my partner, and it was like a full moon night, and the clouds were going over the moon. And it felt like when the clouds went over the moon, like the whole environment just dropped, like the frequency dropped, like the energy around the whole ranch just dropped.
Wow.
And he said to me, he says, Chris, stop, I hear something. And I turn around, and out of the ditch behind him, we both hear this god-awful guttural howl growl. And this giant canine wolf, whatever you want to call it, about the size of a deer, jumps over out of the ditch, over the embankment, lands on the western road and travels west. And the dogs go after the animal, and we go after the dogs, thinking that if they tussle with this animal, it's going to kill him.
Oh, yeah.
And we're running behind this canine wolf, whatever you want to call it. And it was like I blinked, and it was just gone.
Wow.
And it was so strange. The dogs stopped in their tracks, looked at us, and we looked at them like, what the hell was that?
And they're looking at you going, where'd it go?
They were totally stunned, and we were stunned. And then so we walked back to Homestead 1, and we're just like trying to gather our composure, like, what the hell was that? And then the next day we went out to try to take more pictures, and we did, of the photograph of the prints and stuff. And then that happened in 2010. And then in 2011, you know, we were down to one man guy out there. So imagine that incident happens to you and you're out there by yourself now. So in 2015, I'm actually, let me back it up. When we did the initial report on that incident, I put in the report that I didn't even see the animal because that's how nervous I was about losing my clearance. But I saw it and it definitely caught my attention. But so 2015, I'm out there by myself now. You know, the ranch feels like a second home. I don't have any fear factor really. I mean, it was still scary at sometimes, but I felt more at peace there. And I'm sitting in a lawn chair at the east gate, just kind of waiting to see if any trespassers attempt to get on the property. And I'm with the 3 dogs. At this time, we had William, the dog that's on the show now. So I had William, Ruka, and Max, all labs. And they're sitting by my feet. And it's probably about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not really paying attention. And my back is facing the Eastern Valley. And I hear that growl howl coming from behind me. And I remember coming off the chair, the lawn chair, gun out. And or by the east gate. I think it says growl, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Right there. That's exactly where it happened at. Yeah, that's exactly where it happened at. And it was gone in a blink. It was like letting me know that it was still around there, or something was there. You know, I couldn't find any evidence of what it was, but it caught my attention.
Chris, I got 2 questions. One, would the forensics of the footprint ever match to anything known in the animal kingdom? And then 2, what did the thing look like? What did the creature
So it
look
was
like?
matched up to a wolf, actually, a wolf print. And at the time, I know wolves are in the area, but they're very uncommon in that part of Utah, at least back in 2010. We talked to a tracker about it. He said, it's not uncommon to see a pack of coyotes, large coyotes, but to see a lone wolf by itself is very odd. And this was definitely had the characterizations of a wolf. It was very big, black. And this is before
the color, so it was black.
Yeah, it was black. And this is before I even read the book, you know, so I didn't even read the book. And then when I finally read the book, the first chapter is about a wolf. So I'm like, holy cow. So you would think after that event, I would have like a lot more experiences all those years being out there. But really, I mean, I had experiences, but nothing like that ever again, you know. And it definitely caught my attention, like something else was going on out here. And that kind of led me to that kind of flipped my whole different perception, you know.
Chris, were you ever able to explain away the 4 prints, the 2 prints, and the 4 prints? You said, look, one time it went to 2 prints, and then the 3-foot stride's a big creature.
Yeah, it was.
Were you ever to explain any of that away or justify how that could possibly be?
I don't know. It was. We talked to locals around there, and there was, you know, the locals that we talked to were flat out said, "Hey, that's a skinwalker," and we're like, "What?" Wow. And it was weird, man. Looking back at it, you know, I think about that night a lot, you know, often, and I go back to those pictures because I have like 4,000 images of Skinwalker Ranch during my time out there, and I go back and I still find stuff to this day where I missed. I'm like, oh man. I forgot, and that's why I donated my archive to the University of Maryland a couple years ago, so more people can look at my archive and try to see if I missed something, you know.
Right.
And I can still go back and still find things, and I go back to those wolf prints because I got a bunch of them. I'm like, what was that? Was it just my imagination? It's hard to say no because I have physical evidence and a second witness to the event.
I'm going to bring these back up because this is remarkable. I mean, I'm. You know, and I'm looking at this ruler here, and that's a 1 foot, right? And so, whoops, oh, I just clicked out. There we go. Come back here. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I clicked the button over there by accident. But you have the 1 print up here, and this print down here.
Yeah.
Now and I'm not an expert tracker by any means whatsoever, but I'm looking at this, and it doesn't really look to me like this particular animal is running.
Right. Looks like it's like a stride or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
because if it was running, there would be more disturbance of the soil as it left off, and so you're not seeing. That's a perfect print right there. I mean, that's And that's got to be from toe to heel. I mean, you're talking what?
It's showing some weight. It's showing weight too.
Yes, that's like 5 inches.
You know?
I mean, you look at this ruler.
It's a 3-foot stride.
That's incredible. Man. And then
I mean, it's so bizarre. And then you get kind of jaded. You're expecting more of that, you know.
Yeah.
You're kind of like on edge. Like I call it, like me and Carl joke about it, like the Skinwalker fever. You know, and that was one thing I noticed. People get this tunnel vision out there, you know, and it happened to me too. You know, the second week you're out there, you're constantly being overflowed with like, am I seeing this? Is this real? Was that an orb? Was that a raccoon? What is it? And you're trying to really do your best to collect hard evidence.
Right.
And during my timeline, there was no group of scientists. We had no, you know, modern camera systems. It was just me and the dogs, basically, or another officer. So you had to approach things the old-fashioned way, you know, and it was just, I don't know, it was strange.
Man, yeah, and I do remember you telling that story on the show.
Right.
And you had and when you said that, like the gully or the trench or, you know, where the water was, that water, I forget what they call it for the irrigation, but that's where it jumped up out of that was right out of, was that, okay.
Yes.
So was there water in that thing at the time?
It was a very, very little water. It was in the fall, so it was mostly dry. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And the weird thing was, I mean, the dogs sensed it way before we did. You know, they knew something was there. And I tell you, that sound is in my mind, is embedded in my mind to this day of how it sounded. And
you talked later, you know, when we were before the show started, we were talking in there, and you had mentioned about sleeping up on the ridge. You actually slept overnight up there multiple times.
Yeah.
After what you saw, I mean, of course you have the dogs with you, so they would be your alarm system to warn you that something was happening. But still, I mean,
I mean, this is how I looked at it. You know, I truly felt like the more time I immersed myself in the environment, like physically immerse myself in the environment, the more layers are being pulled back.
Yeah,
you know, and I was being almost, I hate to sound crazy, but being guided to find something, you know. And so, like right there, that's Max and Ruka, and that's an area where I used to sleep at too, with the dogs. And during this timeline, you know, year 2, 3, 4, you become kind of numb to the ranch dynamic. And I kind of compare it to almost like being deployed in a combat zone your first time. You know, the first couple months you're on edge. You know, you're like nervous and scared. By the time the end of your deployment, you're pretty much numb to everything, where you're just like, hey, I want to go home.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how my mentality was toward the end. I felt more at peace out there. And I felt like, hey, if I'm going to experience something, I have to be out I can't be just inside Homestead 1 sitting on a couch. That's not going to help. I need to go out and really try to push myself in the environment, push past the fear factor.
Right.
That was the only way to collect hard evidence. And that's what I did. Yep. And I felt like even to this day, I can go out there right now and do it. I felt like that's super important to do that, because you're going to be able to expose yourself to, you know, maybe something dangerous. Yes. But also you prepare yourself for that. But I felt like that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, you saw the wolf, and then, that would have freaked me out. But like you said, you know, you've been around there after a period of time, you will become more, I think, also physically, you know, or spiritually in tune with the area.
Right.
When you're spending so much time there. So that alleviates a lot of that too. Hopefully, in most cases. Some people
I'm glad you bring that up spiritually, because I feel like my spirituality grew out there. Like I felt like it was more spiritual evolution that I was going through out there, going through some of these. And I felt like through my photography, I'm kind of able to show that, because I felt like the more time I immersed myself out there, my creative vision expanded more. Being out, maybe it was just being out there alone, or something. Maybe I was tapping into a different frequency out there. I'm not sure what, but definitely my time on Skinwalker Ranch reflects on my photography now.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I'm going to ask this question. Actually, Mike Owen asked this question, and then we'll get back to the Skinwalker Ranch. But he asked the question: where did you get your photography skills? Did you learn yourself, or was it something that came over time, or did you go to school for it?
It was all self-taught. In high school, I read Ansel Adams' book on black and white photography, and that's what inspired me. And so I kind of always carried that approach. Even when I was in Las Vegas, I spent 20 years in Las Vegas. My Las Vegas portfolio is huge, but I kind of took like a Ansel Adams approach to Las Vegas. I wanted to be like, well, if Ansel Adams shot Las Vegas, how would he do it? And that's kind of like a lot of my vision for Vegas was black. I have a lot of cool black and whites of Las Vegas. And so, I just kind of taught myself, and I felt like the more time I went out, I learned trial and error, and really it's about vision. You got to have I think, creative vision to photograph stuff.
Yep.
I just taught myself.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm doing now. I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube videos.
Right.
Years ago, we didn't have YouTube to help kind of train us on certain things. But now it's like, you want to work on change of brakes on a car you never touched before. Oh, you look on YouTube, it tells you.
Right.
There's a lot of good instruction about taking photos, and that gets you a good head start, maybe, settings and things like that. But you're right, you have to have an eye for certain situations. You see one picture and then you say, yeah, but if I move over here, look what I get from this perspective, and it changes everything.
And I'm probably missing like 1,000 images from 2013 to 14 on Skinwalker Ranch. And I have so many external hard drives and stuff. I'm still trying to find where I put them, because I got some great shots. And I'm like, where the heck did I put those? And I don't know if I lost them during moving or what.
I hope not, man. I hope not. Oh my gosh.
I'm trying to find them.
All of these. I mean, I've been looking at these pictures that you've shared, and and I think there's probably more going on here than Skinwalker Ranch, but like, I'm going to bring this one back up real quick. I know I showed it earlier with everyone. So, this right here, I mean, this is just one of the many collages of pictures that he's, sent.
I put that together to kind of, and that's why I put like Bass crossed out, and then it says my last name and my experiences and observations on Skinwalker Ranch, because that collage of images are all images that I took and things that I discovered out there. The Native American aspect was my primary focus out there. I truly believe that Native history, frequency, energy, and vibration is displaced in the natural environment. And that was something I was my primary focus out there. And then I did experiments with tuning forks inside Homestead 2. I found rocks, areas of interest, a hollow rock, a drill hole on top of the mesa, all kinds of stuff out there. And that picture is kind of a summed up summary of my 6 years of being on Skinwalker Ranch.
Wow.
And the arrowheads you found. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, I found some incredible, and that green picture is weird. So I found a drill hole on top of the mesa. This is in 2014. And when I took a picture with my cell phone, it turned my cell phone color green.
What?
It was weird.
So you didn't do that on purpose. I thought this was like a night vision shot or something.
You're not using a filter there. That's no filter.
That was a daytime shot of my cell phone, because my camera battery had died on my camera. And so when I found that, I was like, what? And then I have a whole bunch of those pictures, but some of those images are in green and pink and purple. And I showed those images to Eric Barden. He was pretty I surprised by him, because he had the similar effects back in 2016 with one of his cell phone cameras too.
Wow. And how many folks that are listening right now, or watching and listening right now? I mean, how many times have we heard stories about that? Electronics just going nuts.
Yeah, that's a real phenomenon out there, where your batteries drain, and you feel drained sometimes physically being out there for too long.
Explain the brain scan here.
I'm glad you brought that up. So I haven't talked about it much, but in 2011, I had an MRI done. I guess because of my time on Skinwalker Ranch. I was told the reason why I had the MRI done was to see if there was any changes in my brain patterns, but I only had one MRI done. And I think it's kind of interesting. And I was never told the results of that test, and that's a whole different topic. And that's the whole reason why I came out publicly in 2019, because I had questions that were unanswered, basically.
Yeah.
And I also had some great pictures of the ranch I wanted to share with people,
Yeah. What is this right here? What's going
So
on?
that yeah, I know. The Eastern Valley and Skinwalker Ranch is, in my opinion, the most important part of the entire dynamic of the property.
Wow.
There is rock formations out there that look like sculptures. That's where I found a majority of all my artifacts. And let me explain to you how important the Eastern Valley is.
Okay.
And the artifacts. Over the years there, I found hundreds of artifacts, but I would take some of those artifacts down to Vernal and get them looked at by museum professionals. So that way it wasn't just me shooting from the hip. I wanted to get real advice.
Right.
And I found artifacts in the Eastern Valley that go back 1,500 years ago to the archaic period.
Wow.
But more importantly, in the same exact location, I found paleo artifacts that go back 10,000 years ago. And that's why I think that was my primary focus. Through those artifacts, we can discover which tribes were out there and their history. And if you really dig deep into some of these tribes, they talk about the Siteka, which James calls the Star People, in their culture.
Yep.
So there is a connection with the phenomena and UFOs and whatever else, but also the foundation is the Native American history in these locations. So, and that's throughout the whole entire Uinta Basin. So that was my primary focus. And while during my time on Bigelow, the Bigelow era, I would find an arrowhead or an artifact or an area of interest, and I would take a GPS location and a photograph, and I had a topographical map of the property.
Right.
And I felt like I was trying to correlate people's experiences to maybe the abundance of artifacts. I thought maybe there was a strong connection there, and I still do to this day. I really feel like I said before, that history is embedded in the natural environment.
Sure.
So that was kind of and that's still my focus today. When I go out to these places, my head's on the ground looking to see what I can find, hard evidence, basically.
Wow.
Well, Jeff, what's really interesting about what you just said is they took a neurological scan of his brain to see if there's any changes, which the inference there, I'm not going to let that go. The inference there is they have found people have had neurological changes in their brain. So they took a scan of his just to see if he had the same phenomena, which means that phenomena had to repeat itself at some point because you're looking for something. What you're looking for.
Right.
So there had to be other occurrences of neurological changes in brain scans.
Well,
I mean, yes, is that logical?
I think so, but also looking back at it now, in 2019, when I learned about OSAP and stuff, and I was reading stuff online about Skinwalker Ranch and medical testing, I'm like, wait a minute, I had an MRI done. So I reached out to the location where I had it done at and got a copy of my MRI and had it sent to me. And then I did a follow-up MRI on my own to make sure there wasn't any changes because they didn't tell me anything.
Wow.
So and then you come out now and you see Gary Nolan out there talking about people who've been involved with the paranormal or UFO activity having damages to the MRI. Well, nobody explained to me back then that they were looking for damage, but clearly they were, which is why they did one scan.
Right.
And I think that's pretty unethical. If I'm going to talk honest about it, it's completely unethical.
Yep. Wow.
You cannot have an employee get an MRI done and then not tell them exactly what the reason for it is. And back then, I didn't push the issue. And the reason why I didn't push the issue is because this is in 2011. The Vegas economy still wasn't on its feet. And, I have no ill will against Mr. Bigelow, but he does have a type of tenacity to fire you if you don't play ball, basically. So I was kind of like stuck in a hard place. I have a brand new baby, a house, and I got to look out for my family. But now looking back now, I have unanswered questions. And I've reached out to my previous employer and was kind of met with some vague responses, to say the least. So hopefully in the future we can have a sit down and have some clarification, because I'm not in the public to represent just myself. I'm representing a small group of individuals who are on Skinwalker Ranch from 2009 to 2016, most of that time alone, with zero support, no backup, no cell service, not even one working static camera to do our job effectively. And I refuse to let that timeline be washed away in the ether. I refuse.
I mean, it was almost like, you know, when I hear you describe that, to me, it's almost like you're a human guinea pig. You're put out there to see what happens to you.
Yeah, I know. I've talked about that briefly in a recent podcast, and I hate to even think that. You know, I hate to think that we were.
I'm sorry I brought it up, but oh my God.
No, it's fine. It's fine. You know, you brought that up, but I'll say in 2019, I met a scientist who actually brought that up. He brought 3 things up to my attention when I met him. He said, number 1, did I know about radiation on Skinwalker Ranch? And I said, no, because I didn't. None of us did. He said, number 2, did you know about $22 million? Again, no, I didn't know about $22 million. And then the last thing he said to me was, how does it feel to know you're possibly a guinea pig in all this? And I said, if that's true, I don't feel very good about it. But then, you know, I don't like to focus on the negativity. I like to focus on the positivity. So I don't like to give it that energy. You know, for me, sure, if they use me as a guinea pig, cool, whatever. But I feel like they lost because of my time. I gained so much more knowledge out there than they ever could have.
Yep.
Because they were afraid of that place. Those people were scared to death of that place. And that place is my second home. I can go out there right now, operate like I did back in 2016. And it's not an ego thing. I'm so comfortable out there. And I have tremendous respect for that basin and the people out there and the locals out there and the new team that's out there. And I'm kind of envious of the new team. You know, I know those guys and they have great support and they have cameras. And I'm like, wow, I wish I had a fraction of that during my time. So it's hard not to think that I was used or we were used. I shouldn't say me. We were used to collect data, to try to secure some type of special access contract or whatever it was. But there's going to come a time where I'm going to have to have a discussion with some of these people in my past and just to hash out what was going on, because I feel like I'm just trying to close a chapter for my kids, for my family. And that's it. That's the whole reason why I went, you know, public, was that I have to close a chapter for my family. And for my fellow colleagues as well. And some of my colleagues that reached out, they don't want to talk about it at all. They want to just kind of put that in the back burner and just press on. And
some people are like, that's, you know, you can't.
And I can't let it go. I felt like almost disrespected to a point because of all my time I did prior to Skinwalker Ranch and the places I worked at, the things I've done, to learn later I was maybe possibly used as a guinea pig. Come on. I feel like it's pretty disrespectful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sorry, I got that impression while you were talking that, you know, because you are collecting data, you're keeping a daily log of everything you find and record and all that kind of stuff. But you are also the data collection.
Right. You know? We all were, for sure. Absolutely.
Every portion of your being and what you collected and what you saw, heard, smelled, everything. All of it is data collection, right, John? I mean,
I was going to say it's repeatable. You know how I always say. But the other thing is he had the military background. He had the military training. So if something unusual happened, you would have that training to defend yourself. Right. So, you know, you were definitely selected for a reason. And part of that was your military background.
You're absolutely right. There's a reason why everybody on that team were prior veterans.
Correct.
With combat experience, military experience. We weren't just some scientist out there, you know, walking around collecting data on a Geiger counter or whatever. We were out there, and I'm glad you bring that up, because it's important for people to understand that when you're out there alone and you're tasked with the job of, number one, protecting the ranch managers out there, protecting yourself, protecting the property, and making sure nothing happens on your watch for 2 weeks, and you're out there alone, and you're trying to also collect data and report anything unusual, because that's part of your job. You want to collect data for your boss. You want to perform for your boss, but you want to collect the right data. You don't want to just make stuff up. And so your mindset out there isn't your typical mindset of like a scientist where you're out there just for a couple of days or a couple hours or even a week. You're out there operating on a whole different level where you're operating in the red zone 24/7, because my day started around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, and it would end around 4, 3 o'clock in the morning the next day. Wow. And then it wasn't like I clocked out and went down to Vernal to a hotel. No, I slept at Homestead 1, and where your backdrop is at the command post, which used to be Mr. Bigelow's bedroom. That's where I slept at. And the reason why I slept there is because that room was closest to the road, so I can hear the dogs bark if they alerted people on the property.
Smart.
So my mind was constantly pegged out of like, I would close my eyes at night thinking to myself, please, nobody get on the property while I'm sleeping. But I have to get sleep at some point because tomorrow I have to get up and do it all over again. Wow. And that was pretty much all of our mindset out there. And it was like, it was exhausting. And then you go back to Las Vegas after 2 weeks and you try to adjust and you feel lethargic and you think that maybe it was just because your workload, but now looking back, well, maybe I was exposed to pockets of radiation. I have no idea. I know right now I'm still getting medical testing.
Good.
Through the VA, and they have found some some problems in some of my tests. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
There's nothing I'm concerned about right now, but I'm closely watching.
Yeah. Good.
Were you able to ever get radiation readings at all in your stay there?
We never even had any equipment to test radiation.
Wow.
Okay. And that's what's weird because I used to work at the Nevada test site where we carried dosimeters on our chest, on our gear all the time.
Yep.
Sure.
You know, and then when the first episode came out of the season, I'm at home with my family and they talk about radiation. And I look over at my wife and my wife says, I knew it. I knew there was something out there. And I was pretty upset. I was in a dark place for a long time, but meeting people like James Keenan and Carl and my friend Taras Matla, the director for the University of Maryland, those guys really helped me have an outlet and I could talk to them about stuff and they listened very well.
Yeah, that's great. I did want to bring up too, you had mentioned earlier, we were talking about the East Valley. And Shannon, folks, by the way, I just wanted to bring this up real quick too, is that Shannon is a moderator for the Skinwalker Ranch Insiders, and she does, and Mike Owen as well. And they do a fantastic job out there, and she's co-hosted for me a few times. But she brought that question up, the East Valley, and I was the same way. I'm not really sure.
If you have that map still, I can show you exactly what that.
I'm going back to find it now. Here we go. I think this. Nope, that's not it. Boop. I have it saved up here somewhere. John probably has it quicker than I do. Here we go. Okay, so there we go.
Okay. So the Eastern Valley, if you look at it says East Gate in green.
Yes, right here.
Yes.
Just north up there, that little valley where all the red dots are at, that's the Eastern Valley.
Okay.
And that's where I found most of my artifacts at. That's where a lot of the rock formations are at. That's where I found the paleo finds, also the archaic finds. Wow. There is significant evidence of an establishment at that location specifically. And I wish and I hope on the new season, I mentioned to Brandon Fugel, I hope they do a drum circle right there. I think that would yield incredible results if they did a drum circle right in the middle of that location. There's a valley right there. I think that would be very important to collect some important data.
Explain that to us, a drum circle.
Like a Native American drum circle. We have like a bunch of natives around an old deerskin drum beating it. That energy and frequency and vibration vibrating throughout that area might yield results of some type of collected data that you can maybe get a reading on. Like I think it was season 2 with the pastor, the rabbi across from Homestead.
Just thinking about that.
Wow.
Homestead 2. If they did a drum circle in that location, I think would yield tremendous results.
Wow.
Do you think frequencies like that, when you do a drum circle, is it amplified? Is that the kind of running hypothesis?
Yeah, I think the energy, frequency, and vibration, displaces out and maybe stimulates activity. I think there's a connection there.
That sounds like Tesla. Energy, frequency, vibration.
That's how I view the ranch. I try to put my mindset at that type of forward thinking, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We, those of us, and like I was talking about the insiders, and if you want to check out being an insider, anybody that happens to be watching right now, I do have a link below in the description. You can check it out there. It is a paid membership, but there is a free trial. And I tell you, we love it. Those of us that are out there as insiders absolutely love it. We get to do so much and interact with the ranch and with the guys out there that are working, and filming now. I think that's actually wrapped up now, but really a cool thing is being an insider there. So, but when I was mentioning that, we get used to looking at the map of the ranch, and when you mentioned that same thing with Shannon, I was like, East Valley, where exactly is that? I don't know where that is, and that's why I wanted to. She brought it up, and I thought, I got to ask this question because I needed to know that as well. Very interesting, and I love this map that you have here.
Yeah, that's kind of what I use to map out my personal experiences, and then all that artifact collecting I was doing out there and areas of interest. And yeah, I think it's very important, some of the stuff that's out there, you know. And the team that's out there now, they've found way more stuff than I ever did, you know. But I feel like my little part is also important as well, you know.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, without a doubt. You know, one question too. I think that you know, the Brandon owning Skinwalker Ranch now, it doesn't go, the property line doesn't go much up into the mesa, does it? Just barely.
Right, they only have like 512 acres of land. But my timeline, we had almost 800 acres because we leased the land on top of the mesa, which gave us more areas to patrol, but also gave us more areas to look for stuff, you know. And also we did it because the ranch manager nearby wanted us to keep an eye on his cattle as well. So it was kind of a two-part deal, you know.
Yep. Wow. Dead cow. I saw that too.
Yeah.
Is that that picture that I saw?
Yeah, that's a picture I took of a cow that actually fell down the mesa. It's probably still there, right there in the middle there.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, that cow. Yeah, that's right. That's where that cow's at.
Wow.
And it actually fell. I remember I was out there that night it fell because I was doing a nighttime patrol, and I was kind of following the herd to see if anything would spook them, you know, like if there was something in the area. And I remember the cow. There was a couple cows that fell down that slope, but that one specifically tumbled. And then we called the ranch manager the next day and said, "Hey, one of your cows had fallen and died." And he said he didn't care about it, but it's. I mean, I kind of monitored over the years to see how it decomposed and stuff.
Right.
And
okay, I gotta ask.
The orange orb, yeah. So that happened. I forgot what year that happened. It was a very windy night. The wind was blowing from the east to west, and it was very, very windy that night. And I was at the east gate, which is right by there with the dogs.
Yep.
And I looked over towards the eastern valley, and it looked like a lantern, like somebody was walking through the eastern valley with an orange lantern. And so naturally, I thought to myself, trespasser, because the lantern was going against the wind. Right. And so I ran over there with the dogs and found nobody over there. And it was weird, but also it happened like maybe it was like a 15, 20-second thing, just enough to kind of catch my attention. And then I couldn't find any evidence of people over there or anything.
So was this below the horizon level of the top of the mesa? Okay. Yeah,
it was below the mesa. It was like in walking ground distance. So that's why I thought it was a trespasser.
Exactly. Yeah.
In that area. So I ran over there and I found no fresh prints of people or anything, but I clearly saw it look like an orange orb going against the wind. And it was just something I documented, and it was strange.
Wow. And then, I mean, I'm fascinated by this map because you have all these things written down here.
Yeah.
Footsteps. We saw a ghost.
Yeah. So I haven't mentioned. So that happened inside Homestead 1 when we had two people, me and another officer. And this is crazy, but I was sitting on the couch facing north. Actually, I was Skyping with my wife at the time, and the other officer was in the kitchen doing the dishes. And it's probably about 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw somebody walk behind him, but it didn't really register. And then I saw him walk into the back bedroom and say my name. And then he came to the front and he said, "Did you just walk behind me?" I said, "No." I said, "But I saw somebody walk behind you." And he's like, "What?" And so we were kind of like freaked out. And we thought, once again, try to be logical about it. Was there a trespasser on the property? What did we see?
Yep.
And we heard, there's been times inside Homestead 1 where you've heard footsteps like walk through the trailer. And then so that particular night, I actually put out a couple cookie sheets with baby powder on the ground to see if they could catch any type of imprints or whatever. And I didn't find anything irrelevant. That was, but it definitely caught my, well, once again, it happened when you least expected it. Inside, you're at Homestead 1, relaxing from being out all day and night, and now something happens inside Homestead 1.
Yeah. Chris, what did the figure look like?
It looked like a very tall person, like just like a tall person. It was taller than the guy that was at the kitchen sink.
Oh wow.
So that's why he thought it was me. That's why he thought it was me, because I'm 6'5".
Right.
And so he went back there to the back room thinking I was, I don't know, back there doing laundry. I don't know what, but it kind of shocked him too. And we were like, what the hell? Like,
wow.
And that's the thing. Wow. It's just like when you least expect it, something happens. You know?
Yeah, like you said, when you're trying to find something, or when you're actually ready for something, nothing happens. And then when you're sitting around it, we find that a lot in doing, paranormal investigations, where you or research. Somebody said researcher. I forgot who said that. So investigator or researcher. Yeah, I guess I'm a researcher because I'm not a trained investigator. So I'm just
over time experiences. You know,
But that very thing, that you try to collect that, but you both experienced it, you both felt it, and that's what made it different.
Right. If it was by myself seeing that, I probably wouldn't even reported it.
Yep.
But since there was a second witness there, I was like, this was strange.
Yeah, and most of the time like when we're trying to collect EVPs or something like that, the chances are that we're going to get more of it when we're actually talking, me and whoever's in the room, and we're like, oh, my battery's dead. Oh, okay, well, let's change that. Boom. Well, that's when we pick something up, is when we're having a conversation about something else. Oh, do you think we should go over to this other room? And then all of a sudden we get this voice that we didn't hear at the time comes over. So when you're not trying to get it is when a lot of times when you get something like that. So wow. This is, Wolf Tracks. I see that in the Wolf Experience. That's
where I had the Wolf Experience right there. So I jumped out of that ravine right there.
Yeah, that's right by what we call the triangle now. You called it the curve, you said?
We just called it the curve.
Okay. Yeah. That's where they did the drilling.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we gotta talk about this real quick too.
Oh yeah.
When we were looking at these pictures, folks, earlier before we started the show, some of these photographs, go ahead and bring that one up, John.
Yeah, I think this is the one.
Yeah. And we thought, okay, he saw some stuff. Maybe I didn't know who did this, but he said, oh, I got to tell that story. I need to hear this story.
Yeah, this is going to be good.
This is very important when we talk about the history of Skinwalker Ranch, because again, it's the Native American lore where this phenomenon connects. And which again was my primary focus. So that location specifically is adjacent to Homestead 3, technically off Skinwalker land. It's right next to the west gate, and it's an area where Ute locals would go there during my time and place dead animal skins as a form of offering of protection. And what I was told by a Ute elder was the reason for those skins was to keep the negative energy off their land and that it stays on Skinwalker land. So you go out there now and those skins are gone. So does that mean the energy is just
been released?
I don't know. But I tell you, when I first saw that, I was like, what in the heck is that? And I remember asking the guy who kind of, hired me and trained me. I asked him, I said, what is that? And he said, oh, it's to keep bees away. And I said, no, that's not to keep bees away. And then later on, I actually talked in 2014, or was it 2012? In 2012, I believe, I was leaving the East Gate to drive to Fort Duchesne to stop at the gas station to get something to drink before I started my nighttime patrol. And I saw a guy in a truck sitting down at the gate. So naturally, I stopped him and asked him how he was doing and if he was okay. And it was I think I'm going to try to find out who it was, but I think I have an idea who it was. But he was a Ute elder. And we started talking about the property. And he mentioned this location to me. And he told me the significance of it and how important it is to understanding the property. And I just sat there and listened. And I told him, I said, yeah, I always felt like when I was on the Homestead 3 area, I felt very uncomfortable. Like I felt very, very uncomfortable. Especially at night, being out there by yourself. There was times I would do the nighttime patrol and I'd get down to Homestead 2 and I'd be like, you know what? I'm not going to the West Gate tonight. Something's telling me not to do it. And I would listen to my gut instinct and press on somewhere else. But I have a routine down where on when I was out there by myself where I would hike all day long and and then, Skype with my wife and have dinner, and then go out right before the sun went down. And I would go out and sit on the mesa just above that location and watch the sun go down, and then wait for it to get dark, and then go out on my own with the dogs and patrol around at night. And it just had a real creepy feel about it. And obviously, when you're seeing that at night, it definitely had a psychological effect too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to show folks where this is at real quick for those of you who don't know.
Yeah.
Right here is where that's where it was, right here, right?
Yep,
The hanging
right
skins.
there.
So this is at the far west corner.
Far west corner.
Ranch. Yeah, right here. Hanging skins right there. And that, like you said, and that's one of the things that I think that, we talked about that a little bit earlier. That's one of the things I feel that is so very important. And I think I know you do too, because you mentioned this, is the Native American aspect to this whole thing that many people are maybe overlooking.
Right.
You have to take them seriously on this. I
100%.
mean,
and I'm not saying what I'm talking about is the number one answer for Skinwalker Ranch, because as you know, there's so many layers to that property with the gilsonite and the geological aspects and the magnetic anomalies and all this stuff. There's so much stuff out there, and who knows what's in that ground. But the number one thing that's provable 100% is the Native American. And it's not like one or two arrowheads out there. I just know I found incredible artifacts out there that go back to paleo time. So it makes you wonder, what was drawing these people out to this location? Was it because of the magnetic anomalies that they were witnessing, and they viewed the area as a spiritual site?
Yeah,
that's what I believe. I believe they viewed the area as a spiritual site, and you have there's also negativity in the area with the history with the Black Hawk Wars that happened throughout the basin, and all that energy is displaced in that environment. So there's a lot of overlapping layers. And by all means, I'm not saying I'm the ranch expert by any means, especially now with Eric Bard and Travis Taylor and all the stuff they found. But the evidence that I found led me to this conclusion that a lot of it is based on the Native American history. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, I do too. I agree with you 100%. And that's something that I applaud you for that, knowing that and making that part of your research, but also others that we've talked about earlier, like Christian Roper and those guys that have been out there with their team. They're getting ready to have this documentary come out, which is talking to the people, the indigenous peoples and all the locals and everything else, trying to get some answers to this whole thing. And obviously, and we keep talking about all the high strangeness, as James Keenan says, the high strangeness, the magnetic anomalies, the radiation, all these different types of things that are happening out there. It's been proven that it's happening, so we know it is. Yeah. Is that what makes this place strange, and even for the Native Americans to want to, either fear it and want to contain it, or use it as some sort of this was a special place to people.
Absolutely, it was.
And I think it's a combination of all those things that makes it.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. You're right. I think so too.
Yep.
I think as time goes on and the new team explores more stuff and they find more of it, we're going to probably find more stuff about this property that. Yeah. I can't wait to see what they find.
No, that's why we all keep watching this show. And there's so many people that are, have they on the Skinwalker Ranch website, the Insiders website. Now they have a collage or it's actually like a video they put together of the different the things that the insiders have seen just from watching the screens, the live streams that we get. And they put together, and I captured something too. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's just. Yeah.
And it's like this, not just specifically tied to Skinwalker Ranch, like James talked about, and Carl. It's the whole Uinta Basin out there that's got a lot of this history and phenomena. And once again, there's a lot of Native American backing foundation to all this stuff. And it's just very, I truly believe that Skinwalker Ranch is ancient, hallowed grounds. I think it's a place where it should be respected. And if you go out there, tread lightly. And I always tell people, I went out there in 2019 as an advisor for the TV show. And I told everybody out there, make sure you leave with some of the sage that's out there. Because if you have a hitchhiker, you're going to need that sage to smudge your house.
I was going to say, Vesta May asked that question. What about the hitchhiker effect? What do you think about that?
I think it's 100% real. I know it's real because it affected my family personally in 2011. And at the time, I didn't know what it was until I realized the land being Native American Foundation. And my opinion is on a hitchhiker effect. I believe if you wander in these locations that have this ancient history, this hallowed grounds, you know, some of that energy can attach to you and follow you home and then present itself as a warning, basically saying, hey, look, you trespass on my land. Now I'm going to trespass on your land.
Wow.
Tread lightly.
I never thought of it like that before. Wow.
And I got that from actually my mother, who was actually born and raised on Indian reservations pretty much her whole adult life. And I brought that up to her, and she told me she said, take sage if you're going there, because you're going to need to smudge just in case something negative follows you. It may not be negative, but it's going to be something to get your attention to tell you, hey, if you're going to come out here, you better be respectful. And I really believe the ranch has an ability to find out if somebody's genuine or not. Like if you don't have a genuine spirit, that you will be exposed on that property. I saw it firsthand. Guys on my team go out there and have bad experiences. But also, I'm a firm believer, if you stare in the shadows for so long, the shadows will stare back.
Yeah,
that's
true. Yeah.
If you want
very similar to that before,
yeah, if you want to focus on the darkness out there, and I did for a while when I first got out there, that darkness will focus back on you, and that's when I kind of shifted my entire perception out there and focused on the positivity. And I showed that through my photography, because I felt like through my photography I was very focusing the land in a respectful way and trying to capture the essence of the property.
Yeah. Wow. And I agree with you. I really do. I knew, I had a feeling this was how you felt about a lot of these things. And I'm so glad to discover your ethic and your ideals about the whole thing, and having a peaceful nature to begin with. And I think that's huge. Especially when you're dealing with something like this. You know, you've got some other things I could talk about just this map all night long, and I know we got to kind of move along with things. And there's so many good questions that are coming up.
A lot of them, Jeff.
Robot has asked a good question too. He says he's doing a thesis on frequencies, and he asked the question. He said, "Did you ever notice a lack of birds or insects or animals or anything?" Well, he says in the triangle. I'd like to know around any of the area.
Yeah, you know, that's one thing I really paid close attention to was the wildlife in the area. There was days on the ranch where I didn't see a single bird in the sky or anything.
Really?
Wow.
It was just really eerie. And there was other days where it was the land was flourishing with deer activity and animal activity. So yeah, there was times out there where it just had this real eerie sensation that nothing was even out there. It was bizarre.
Yeah.
And I really paid close attention to that, and kind of followed suit.
Yeah, because they're animals, insects. I'm not going to say that insects aren't.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not a person who messes with insects that much or knows anything about them. But animals, dogs especially, and we've seen with the cows and all that, they're biosensors. They call them biosensors. Yeah, Chris, were your dogs? Did your dogs biosense any phenomena? Because they do. Animals have a different attunement that I think humans did at one time that we've lost over time. I've talked about that many times on the show. We've kind of lost a lot of that. I think animals are still in tune with that. And so if there's something weird happening, they might avoid the area. And that's when you see the lack of wildlife. Right.
And he's right. The dogs were our greatest asset out there. They picked up on stuff way before we did. And there was times on patrol where they were, glued to our hips, and we knew something was out there. Maybe it was just a normal predator or it might have been something else. And there was other times the dogs were out there chasing rabbits and just being carefree. So the dogs usually picked up. I really paid close attention to the dogs. And over the years, they became more than just a trusted companion. They became like a team member.
Yes.
So they were very valuable to us out there, and I really cherish my time with the dogs out there a lot.
Very sensitive team member, and one that can help warn you, save you. I mean, it's absolutely. I love dogs. We had Carrie Dempsey ask a question: do you know where the Shermans saw the wolf-like creature, and wondered if it was near where you saw the footprints and the creature, then the wolf-type creature?
It's actually kind of close, really.
Really?
We saw the wolf was by the corrals, and the corrals are about maybe a couple 100 feet away from the triangle area, and that's where they saw the wolf come from. The southern tree line was in that location. So that's a good point. It's kind of in the same area, not directly, but kind of.
Yeah. And Jay also asked a question: do you have any pictures that you took of Homestead 3?
Oh yeah, I got hundreds of pictures. And if you go on Twitter, that's where I post most of my images.
I'm gonna have to get your Twitter. Yeah, get your Twitter handle up there, and I'll put it in the description later on. Yeah. But what was it again?
It's Chris Bartel SWR at Twitter. Okay. But if you go through my timeline, I post all kinds of pictures of Homestead 3 and Homestead, all the places out there. And I answer questions out there. I answer questions if people ask questions. It's a place where I go, and I have a YouTube channel too where people can reach out to me and email me, and I'm very open about everything. So
good. Yeah, that's great. Got another question from Max there. With all your military and security training, were you ever scared on Skinwalker Ranch?
100%. I'd be a liar if I said no. I mean, the first year out there was very uncomfortable being out there, especially by yourself. But just like a deployment, you adapt over the situation, and by year 3, 4, 5, it becomes a second home. But yeah. Absolutely. I was scared the first year out there, especially. There was a time where we sat inside Homestead 1 or Homestead 2 in a lawn chair, with the task of maybe trying to make contact with whatever's out there. And I remember being on that chair at like 3 o'clock in the morning with the dogs, thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing? Like, I can lose right there, lawn chair, Homestead 2. I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, what am I doing? Because if I'm sitting here inside Homestead 2, who's watching the East Gate or who's watching the Mesa? Right. So all this is playing in the back of your mind while you're sitting there waiting to make contact with whatever's out there. And we would do EVP sessions inside Homestead 2. And we never found anything really significant during those EVP sessions. But the psychological effect of sitting there by yourself, knowing there's no backup, no cell service, not even a camera to watch you, it definitely pushed away the fear factor after doing it for a while.
Chris, did any of your EVP sessions render any sort of evidence at all?
No, I didn't really find anything. So I would do these EVP sessions at night, and then I would download them to my little iPhone, and then I'd walk around the property at daytime and try to listen to what was going on. I never really found anything too significant that I would be like, oh yeah, it's overwhelming evidence, Right. I just never did, and maybe I missed something. I don't know, but I tried.
Yeah, I got this right here. I saw this right here because I've had this experience happen.
Yeah, something
ran up on you. What was that all about?
So that was in the fall of 2011, by myself. I'm out there at Homestead 2. I was just walking and doing a check inside there to make sure there was nobody in there. And I was kind of hanging out in the back area of Homestead 2, and the leaves were on the ground, really thick with leaves. And the dogs weren't with me this time. For whatever reason, the dogs stayed at Homestead 1. They didn't follow me, which I thought that was weird.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, it's probably like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I start leaving the area, and I feel the sensation of something running behind me, like charging at me. And I thought it was like a mountain lion, or because there is mountain lions in the area, but I thought it was an animal coming, like attacking me, because I heard the rustling through the leaves, like coming at me. So when I whipped around to see what it was, there was nothing there.
Yeah. And
I just kind of slowly backed up to the road, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go back east where the dogs are at. And that's exactly what I did. I said, I'm going back east. I'm not going to mess around over here anymore.
Yeah, that experience, that feeling, and I've had that happen to me a few times in my life.
Yeah.
Where you get that sensation that something is coming up on you, and I told the story here, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. I was sitting on the couch reading a book, and you have that sense. There was nobody else in the house. I was the only one in the house, but I had that sensation that somebody was walking towards me, and I was like, it even startled me because I felt it.
Yeah.
You feel it, you sense it, and I feel something was there that I could not see that was walking towards me because all the signs said that's exactly what happened. And so I have to go with it. There was this here, the wolf trap. Well, one of the folks asked about the wolf trap. RB Mora asked about that, and I was going to show the picture also. I think that's it there.
That's it. So on the TV show, I talk about on the season 3, episode 6. I talk about the cave I found out there. So this was 2012, I believe. I'm out there. Actually, what happened was I was on top of the mesa, and it was above Dog Run 2 area, or the Bait Pen 2 area.
Okay.
And I was following a trail of artifacts. U agate is very precious out there, and so I was following some U agate flakings down this area of the mesa, and it led on down the mesa. So I just followed it down, and it led to that cave opening. And from the road looking up, you couldn't see the cave, but going down the mesa, I found the cave, and I jumped down into the cave, and I found 2 of those big wolf or animal canine traps, and they're very old, as you can tell in that picture.
Yeah.
And I pulled them out of that little cave, and most of the cave was collapsed.
Wow.
And so I took those traps back to Homestead 1 to document and for evidence. And couple days later, I went back out there to discover more of the cave, and a storm had come through and kind of closed in the area where I couldn't get back in there.
Really?
And it was kind of dangerous, so I didn't really press it because I'm out there by myself. And next thing I know, I get smashed in by a bunch of rocks out there, and nobody finds my body for who knows how long.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god.
So it was kind of cool. It was kind of cool going back out there last year and showing the team the area where the cave was at, and them being able to find that there is indeed there's actually, I believe, 3 cave systems on that property. One by Homestead 3, one at that location, and then one in the Eastern Valley. There's 3 that I found out there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about that, because that was one of the things that when you were on the episode, you were talking about a cave. You were up there. There's that one spot where they were doing the smoke test with the smoke grenades and throwing them down there, and you get a little bit of smoke at first, and then it's getting sucked in.
Yeah.
And cavities and underground ventilation is what's going to cause that. And now natural ventilation, when you have a pile of rocks, you're going to have a lot of spaces and gaps and whatnot in those rocks down below. And I think that's what was happening there. Yeah. But you had said that there was a cave basically in that spot. Obviously, you spent an awful lot of time there.
Yeah. So
that's where you're getting this now, what you're telling us about different cave systems that are up there?
Yeah, there was at least 3 different cave systems that I found that were partially collapsed in. Like at one time, they had been there for a long time, and then maybe over time, it just collapsed in. And that's where I found those traps was in a partial collapsed cave system. I could tell when I got inside that cave that the further back, it was just all smashed in. I couldn't go back any further.
Right.
And I was like, that's weird. And then, talking to some of the locals around there, they said, yeah, there's caves all over in this basin. Wow. And they come up from like the thing James talked about, the sump, or by Blind Frog Ranch. They come all the way down through Blind Frog Ranch area, through Dark Canyon, through Skinwalker, and then out to Dark Canyon. So there's cave systems all throughout that basin.
Yeah, that's what Tracy Scott was asking that question too about.
That's a good question.
Yeah, about because we had, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he was out there, and he said that to him it looked like it wasn't a natural cave in, because there was no you're going to have the softer materials, the sands and the dirts and whatnot, wash out from underneath it and create this flow coming out from underneath it, and then you'll have the rocks falling down. There wasn't that soft material flow. There was just the rocks.
Yeah.
Do you think it was done? Yeah. I mean, what's your thinking on that? Was it done on purpose, you think, or?
I think so. And I actually talked to, once again, being an investigator, you get most of your intel from the locals out there. And it was in 2013 or 2012. I talked to somebody who said, yeah, the Utes, or it might have not been the Utes, it was some tribal members that collapsed those caves on purpose. Yes, that's what I was told.
I never thought about that. I never thought
and
about
it. And this happened years ago, before anyone even got out there.
Wow.
So why that happened, I have no idea.
That's the question. For what purpose?
Yeah, what was the purpose? There's the purpose, and what James has talked about is there's that gold that's out there. There's gold out there, and so maybe they were trying to close those caves in order to hide that gold, or I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I mean that leaves a big open area where somebody who like me who doesn't speculate at all, right, folks? Right. I mean, everybody knows that I don't speculate on anything.
Not at all.
That opens up a can of speculation for me right there. Oh my gosh, because I had never considered that the indigenous peoples would have done that. That never dawned on me.
Yeah, and so they were keeping the secret for something, or I don't know. I mean, like I said,
trap something. Because you were talking about putting the skins up down there to keep something on the ranch.
Yeah.
Was that one of their ways of trying? I mean, I could go on and on. I better not, because
I mean, and look, I spent so much time out there, and I still have questions out there, and that's why I still go out there to this day with James and Carl. And we go out, we do investigations, we talk to locals, we go to new locations, not just Skinwalker, and we try to piece everything together. I think that's, and I said this on a TV show. Skinwalker Ranch is bigger than a TV show. It's bigger than my photography. It's bigger than a government contract. Yep. There's real history out there, and with that history comes the mystery and the truth that we all want to find out. What makes this place so significant and unique? And I think a lot of it is the magnetic anomalies that the new team is finding, and James has documented. And did that come from an asteroid hit? I don't know. I can't say that, but. I can only report what I know, and then what I know is the Native American aspect side of it.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, that is a paramount important part of it. Absolutely, for sure. There was another question. Let's see. I think. Oh, this was again Tracy. Question, Chris. When did you find out about Mr. Bigelow owning Mount Wilson Ranch? And also, do you think that the Bigelow did that? Oh, he did the explosion. No, we answered that one already about the natives. But so Mount Wilson. I mean, have you been up there with Chris? I mean, Carl.
I'm going up there very soon with him. And yes, I did know that Bigelow owned that ranch a long time ago, before Skinwalker. It was just kind of like common knowledge.
Okay.
That at one time he owned it. I didn't know at what extent or why he owned it. I just knew that he did own it. So I'll be up there probably pretty soon to go help Carl with his investigation, also to provide insight of what my eyes can bring to the table.
Yep.
And I can't wait to go out there and photograph the property. I'm really looking forward to do that. I can't wait. Yeah, I'll be posting a lot of images of Mount Wilson.
Oh my gosh. Mount Wilson, no. Mount Wilson, somebody asked, is Mount Wilson in California? Where exactly? It's
in Nevada.
Okay.
It's by Pioche, Nevada.
Okay. And that's it. You can actually, people can go. I mean, does he rent those rooms out? It's like a hotel okay. I thought so. So folks, you can go there. If you want to do your own investigation. I'm sure that, I guess the guy's name is Jeff, isn't it? I thought it was like a hotel and a place you can go and stay. So go up there and check it out. I'm going back out there. I was out in Vernal area, and I spent I was out there for about 2.5 weeks. Staying at the campground. And I'm going back this summer. I'll be there for Phenomenon again next year in September, right after Labor Day in September. I'll be there, but I'm going to stay out there for like a month because, and I'm hoping I can kind of hook up with Carl and maybe you guys a little bit and see some of this stuff. I don't know when you're going to be out there. I know you don't live there, so
me and Carl and James. Usually we plan like a block out of the year to all get together at some of these locations and see what we can find. So we'll see if we can make it work. The more the merrier. The more people around, because you might see something that we miss. So everyone's welcome. We don't hide it. We're not trying to hide data or push an agenda. We just go out and explore. That's it.
Right. Man, I tell you what, this has been so cool. I knew that, and the whole Mount Wilson thing again. That's just watching Carl, and that's what kind of really drew me into his investigations. And then, of course, bringing you guys on, James, and you into this whole thing. But the extent of what he does to really try to, and he looks at it like you do in many ways, but looks at it from different angles.
Right.
And that's, you can't go into it. I always talk about something like this being like an archaeologist. An archaeologist goes into the ground. They say, okay, I'm going to dig in this spot. And he doesn't go in there with a preconceived notion of, oh, I'm going to find this, or I'm going to prove that I'm trying to prove something by digging here. No, they take what they find and they build a story based upon what they find.
Right.
That's why I feel that you guys are doing the same thing.
Same thing. We're just trying to, and look, sometimes we do a good job of checking each other too. Like, hey, are you sure that's what you think is what you want to talk about? Is we do a good job double checking each other, so that way we don't get the Skinwalker fever where you get the tunnel vision and just blindly believe something. You got to really take a step back and focus and see what the heck you're talking about.
Right. So I guess I was going to ask the one question that I've kind of asked everybody about this, and I ask the insiders when I have, and we're going to be doing another Insiders Insights pretty soon too, because I got to get Richard Cornwall on. But I ask, and I think you've kind of already answered this question over multiple discussions here tonight. That what do you think is happening out there? And I think that there's many things happening out there,
right,
and not any one specific thing.
Right.
I think that's a summation of it. Yeah,
I mean, 100% right. There's definitely so many overlapping layers when it comes to Skinwalker Ranch. The one that was my focus was just because of, I treated the ranch as a crime scene, and my evidence led me to the conclusion that the ranch, the foundation, is the Native American history that's out there. Some of that energy, frequency, and vibration is displaced in the natural environment. And maybe some of the negative blowback that people have had out there is the fact that we don't belong out there. It might be just that simple. Right. And people often say, I've had this discussion with other people, and they say, well, why isn't other Indian reservations, haunted? And the truth is, they are. I've gone to probably 12 different Indian reservations in the last 10 years that report the phenomena exactly like at Skinwalker, and it's on an Indian reservation. The difference is Skinwalker Ranch has just had the attention in the last 20 plus years.
Exactly.
Sure. People that are documenting the phenomenon. But you go to any Indian reservation and you talk to the locals that will talk to you, and they'll tell you very openly about this stuff. And so that's my focus, is like, maybe we should go back to that mindset of like tapping into the earth more, or having that focus that everything's connected. Because if you look at society now, we're so disconnected as a species. Oh,
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yep.
And let's pretend if I was an alien species coming to Earth, what timeline am I going to pick? It'd probably be the Native American or the indigenous people timeline that are deeply connected to the Earth and the universe and each other.
Yes.
And have that understanding. These ancient cultures, maybe, we think that we need like a really complicated answer to some of these questions, but it might be just that simple, where there's an ancient that we're just not picking up because maybe we're too arrogant, or maybe we don't deserve to know,
Yeah, so, that could be too. Wow. I'm so happy to hear you saying those things, because that's exactly how I feel about it too. And then and again, I've mentioned this before and people have heard me say it, but this things like this right here dumb us down.
Yeah.
We become so less attuned to our surroundings and Mother Earth, if I could go there and say that, that we are not aware of so much. We've tuned it out.
Right. We have.
And the indigenous folks hundreds of years ago did not tune it out. They were in tune with it.
Yeah, absolutely they were.
Yeah. So
absolutely. There's so much to learn from those old cultures. And that's something, I did a lot of meditation while I was on Skinwalker Ranch, just by myself. My mom actually raised me more of a Buddhist mindset. So I really practiced a lot of meditation. And so my whole military career, everything, I've always done meditation, but specifically at Skinwalker Ranch, I did a lot of meditation on the rocks and stuff. And I really felt that helped me in tune the environment. And And I really felt like that kind of helped guide me to find the artifacts, to find the areas of interest, and I also felt like I was protected almost, like there was this, like an ancient great spirit there protecting me or guiding me to these locations,
Very well likely. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't doubt that one bit.
I still kind of feel that way to this day. So
yeah,
I love being out there.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just love being out there. So it's just,
John, we're getting close to the 2-hour mark, and it's just flown by again once again. But I did want to show John. I think you have one of the pictures of his or slides of his pictures.
Sure.
These again, I look at these and I'm like, matrixing pops into my brain immediately when I think of these. But you have these photographs that you've taken or like a mirror image going back. Explain this to us a little bit. What is your feeling and meaning behind putting the pictures together in this way?
So this is interesting. It was actually last year, or maybe a year and a half ago, my son and I were watching Stranger Things. And he knows I used to work at Skinwalker Ranch, and he made the comment, you were part of Stranger Things before Stranger Things, I guess. And he made a reference to the upside down world. And when he said that, something clicked into me like, wait a minute, what if I went back to my Skinwalker archive and started flipping some of the images? Maybe I would see something that I missed. And so I started doing that with all my images of Skinwalker Ranch and other areas of the Uinta Basin. And to my surprise, I was able to kind of like show a different perspective, but also made me wonder, is this what some of the ancient people saw after long sweats, where these flipped realities? And there's one image I think I sent to you, if you can pull it up, of the Indian. Indian chief.
John's got quite a few of them here. Oh, that's the one where you talk about the sham. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one specifically,
look at that.
If you can zoom in, you can see a face, arms
Jeff,
out,
can you pull that up?
Yeah.
A headdress, Indian attire, the whole 9 yards. And it's just a flipped image of a picture I took at Blind Frog Ranch. But when you zoom into the face, it's unbelievable. There's eyes, a nose, a mouth.
Grief. Look at that.
Isn't that something? Isn't that crazy?
A chin, a mouth, there's horns.
Chin, a mouth, like a headdress. The arms are extended out of the tree trunks. And if you zoom out, he's wearing like an old ancient attire dress, like a ceremonial dress. And then his feet at the very bottom. It's just, I have that picture framed in my office right now. I look at it often.
Make of this, I really don't. I mean, I
clearly see something when he's zooming out of an Indian with his arms out as like a protector. Like, it's just unbelievable. I love this picture, and I took it with James Keenan back in 2021, and then I flipped it, and that was the result. And so I've been doing that with a lot of my photography, and it's showing these really cool images, and I'm just very fascinated by it. And I post them a lot on Twitter, and other people use them for for backgrounds for their.
Yeah, I was going to say, that would be cool on my phone, actually. Yeah.
I plan on maybe in the future printing them off and then signing them, and then
you should do that.
That's cool.
Giving them out to people or something. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea what something like this means, if anything, but it's a beautiful picture, and but I mean, for it to come out like, and there's another one that I'll show here in just a second that has a kind of a face on it. I don't know what to make of it. I honestly have no idea what to make of it, but it's just fascinating that it comes out like this.
It makes me feel like there's something there, and it's communicating through me with the photography or something,
Yeah, could be. I mean, there's another one here that if I can find it here. I know there was one inside one of these other pictures. Oh, here it is, right here. Yeah, and I kind of breezed over this one earlier. And I'll bring this one up real quick here. There, that one there.
Right. And so that one is actually at the Eastern Valley on Skinwalker Ranch. If you zoom in, it looks like there's an old native face right there in the middle of the picture.
Yep.
And that's just a flipped image of the Eastern Valley, which I believe 100% is the most important area on that entire land.
Wow. Remember that, folks, what he just said about the Eastern Valley.
It's So much to be discovered out there.
Yeah. Wow. So, and these are also on Twitter and
I post them a lot. And
okay.
Yeah, I post a lot. I post all these pictures on Twitter. I like once a day or a couple times a week. I post brand new because I have so many pictures I like to share with people, and I have a YouTube channel, but I've only just started doing that, posting like videos of the pictures and stuff, and I probably should do more of that.
I have the this is a real quick, folks, too. This is the website here at the University of Maryland, correct?
Right. That's the Taras Matla from the University of Maryland, the director out there, reached out to me a couple years ago, and we talked, and he actually asked if he can first he asked if he can buy my Skinwalker archive, like a couple images, and I ended up just donating the whole archive to the University of Maryland so it can be archived forever.
Yeah.
So because it documents a unique timeline in Skinwalker Ranch history.
Yeah, but, I have not. I didn't know about this until we talked about it before, as we were preparing this week for the show. I had no idea. I'm going to spend some time checking this out. And folks, like I said, I have a link for this in the description below, so you can just go down there, click on it. It'll take you right to the site. You can check this thing out. And I also want to put there. I want to put your YouTube channel in there as well, so people can go see that. And here's here's a bunch more images.
Yeah, there's just some of it, like, and they did a really good job of breaking it down, and I was very impressed. But I'm also very grateful that they did that, because it kind of helped me close a chapter in my life,
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
Which is very important to me, because I'm able now to kind of focus on new adventures.
Yeah, and your new partners, you guys out there. That was so cool. And I just I envy you for being able to do all this, and hopefully I'm going to do some of it myself. I'm like I said, I'm going out there. I'm going to be out there for about a month. Okay. 2.5 weeks was simply not enough.
Oh, I know. There's so much to see out there.
A whole week of that was taken by Phenomicon, which was awesome in itself. And folks, you got it. If you haven't been to Phenomicon, you need to check out 2023 Phenomicon. I think it's like the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th or something like that of September. It's the weekend after Labor Day weekend.
I'll try to go out there too during that time.
Yeah, and it was a great experience for me, and I know many of the insiders that I got to meet there loved it, had a great time there as well. Awesome. But it wasn't enough time. I did some exploration a little bit at night, but then on the weekend, when the weekends came, I was definitely out. I was driving around doing like you, taking pictures and exploring things. But my problem was I wasn't sure exactly where I was allowed to go.
Right.
I needed a map, something that would tell me what's BLM land, where am I allowed to go, and I don't want to walk on nobody else's. I respect other people's.
Yeah, that's a big thing out there for sure.
Yeah, and I don't want to be, and you might get a gun in your face, but not because of that. I just want to respect people's private property, and I don't want to do that. So that was one of my issues of going out there. I didn't want to accidentally venture into somebody's property by a mistake and cause an issue of some sort. But so that's why you need somebody that knows where to go and all that kind of stuff. But I have to go back and explore it some more, because there's just too much to see. I mean,
it's so gorgeous out there too.
It's what? Say that again.
It's so gorgeous out there as well.
It is. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it is. Somebody said, question. It's Robot again. He said, the picture just shown reminds me of the studies in Central America shown by the Aztecs. Have you found an Aztec connection to Skinwalker Ranch or the area?
That's a good question. And sometimes I would be out there finding some of these rock formations and artifacts, and it made me think maybe there was an even older ancient civilization out there, way before. There are some very interesting rock formations out there that really have your head scratching. Like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
Good question. Yeah, there could be. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah. Holly Remkus comes to mind. Holly Remkus is a lady that we've had on the show before, and she actually looks for rock formations that were created by by mankind.
Mm-hmm.
She finds all she's out there in the Southwest and all that, and she's got quite a few. Her and but they were actually working on the Knights of the Golden Circle. Jesse James and all of that kind of stuff, and looking at it, and she was finding where they were leaving rock formations and signs of where to go and where to find things. But I think she would be fascinating. She probably has a lot of these herself. She posts a lot of pictures of weird, like a face that's been kind of created out of rock formation and stuff like that. Very interesting things. But man, this has been I knew that this show was going to be like this, and I saw people were already saying we got to have a part 2.
Jeff, we haven't even asked him about UAPs yet.
I know.
I mean, we haven't even got to the UAP part of it.
Well, I'm pretty jaded when it comes to the UAP topic because of my background before coming to Skinwalker Ranch. Do I believe there's aliens out there? I do, but I believe a lot of the stuff that we see and report is probably our technology. I'm not saying that all of it is, but I'm just saying it's, I don't know. I'm very jaded when it comes to the UAP topic, but I'm also very open to it. You know, I had experience before even joining the Air Force in Kansas as a young kid. To this day, I'm still like questioning what did I just witness? And it wasn't just me who witnessed it. It was me and my parents who witnessed it. So, and I've seen things up in the desert that have my head scratching as well, but also places where I used to work at, I'm kind of jaded when it comes to the UAP topic, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And we understand the stuff you can't share.
Right. And that's what it kind of boils down to, you know? I respect my previous employers and my NDAs I signed, and you know, I'm very open about everything, and I'm just happy that like I said, we have places like 51 and the Nevada test site where new technology is tested and protects our freedoms and everything else. But
absolutely.
Yeah. That's what when we had James Keenan on, Carl actually showed up in the chat, and he was in there talking back with us a little bit and throwing some stuff out there to James. And people, and I thought, man, we need to, I had mentioned on the show, I said, we need to have all three of these guys, Chris, James, and Carl on the show together.
That'd be fun.
Everybody's like, get them. And I sent that message to you about that. They haven't responded yet, but you did right away saying, let's do it. So,
absolutely.
Oh,
I love having these conversations because it helps me close, like I said, my chapter in my life, but also, you know, it's kind of neat seeing how more people are involved into Skinwalker Ranch. You know, back in my time, I never thought in 1,000 years it'd be a mainstream topic, you know, during my timeline. So it's kind of cool to see that it's bringing attention to the basin, and there's so much history out there that's really cool for people to go out there and learn. And if I can provide some insight of my knowledge and my experience to people, I think at the end of the day, we're all just looking for answers and intrigued and curious, and that's important.
Yep. I agree 100%. Yeah. And that's why, and it was one of the things that I asked when I was walking around at Phenomicon. I did a little live stream there while I was walking around. I actually had Dr. Taylor, Travis Taylor, you know, and him and I spoke for just a moment together. And that's what we were talking about, was the fact that now that the government has started to open up a little bit on some of this stuff, it's time for academia to get on board.
Right.
Just think if we started teaching classes about, like you said, being an investigator and looking into these kinds of things, and opened this up to where now you're not being ridiculed for what you saw or what you want to talk about or the experience you had. We want to engage it and dig into it and find out where it goes and more about it. It's time for that to happen. And I think that being open about it, like on this show here and other shows that you've done, and your you know, pictures going out there and your experiences being out in the public, that's what we need more of. Right.
And I believe so too.
Yep.
And then going back to my time on Skinwalker, because of my background, like I said, I'm jaded when it comes to UAP topic. I didn't spend that much time observing the skies because I kind of had a general idea of what was out there. I spent more of my time on I used to do this visualization technique where I had just landed on a different planet, and it was my job to find evidence of life. And so that kind of tuned my perspective and focus on investigating the ranch, boots on the ground, you know, looking at the dirt, looking at the animals, artifacts, and then collecting that data. That was my focus.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, and I'm glad you did, and I'm glad you're sharing it today.
Amazing.
So thank you
Amazing.
so very much. This has
I
been
greatly
It's awesome.
appreciate the time, everybody. I really do. It means
this
a
has
lot
been
to
a
me.
great show. I'm so fascinated by everything that you've experienced and sharing with us. I just really, yeah, I'm gonna have you back at some point, even by yourself, just to come back and do a part 2 at some point. I know you're a busy guy. We'll have to talk about that later. But yeah, this has been and phenomenal. It's been a phenomenal show, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. John, what do you think, man?
They're already demanding a part 2 and part 3.
I
I'm
know
looking at the comments.
we have well over 100
I can't
people
wait.
watching. Yeah,
Phenomenal.
And
Phenomenal.
thanks again for you guys taking the time to have these open conversations, because as you know, 10, 20 years ago, it was, like you said, frowned upon,
exactly.
So it's important that we keep talking about this stuff, because it's very important.
Yeah, it truly is. And I think that we're getting closer and closer to answers. And the answers are probably not going to be what we thought they would be. And it's going
Absolutely.
to be a completely different direction. So, again, okay, I'm going to wrap it up. Folks, thank you so very much. And like I said earlier, if you like the content of our show, give us a thumbs up on that. Those thumbs up help us so very much. And share this out there. I mean, don't keep this to yourself. We had a wonderful night here with Mr. Bartel, and he has shared so much with us. Share it with your friends, get it out there so people can hear this and spread it around. We really appreciate that. Again, thank you, Chris. We're going to get you back. John Edwards, thank you so much, sir, for being there. And Jan and Linda and helping out in the chats and everywhere. Thank you guys so much for your help. You make all this happen. That's it for tonight, folks. Tomorrow night, we got Beyond Oak Island. We are going to be talking about the episode with Ari's Treasure. So we'll be on 7:30 tomorrow night for that. And we got more shows coming up next week and on. So again, thank you folks for being here with us tonight, and we'll catch you next time right here at JFree906. Good night.